Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And on tonight's episode, we are over in Oasis again tonight. Basically, there is 38 people on. Anywhere from level 12 to level 17 is about the average. There's a few people who are a little bit lower than that, level 10 and 11. 10 is the lowest I've seen in this zone, so I wouldn't suggest coming over any lower than that. But even that level is pretty low for a Necro, which means if you're any other class, that's probably going to be way too low, because Necros are really good at soloing, and if they can't take the creature on very well, chances are you're not going to do too hot at it, at all, unless you have really good armor on. Then you can come over here and fight some really high level creatures. But for the most part, when I got here at level 10, everything was red to me. Very few things were yellow, and even more few things were blue, and those were really only right next to the zone entrance. And the moment you walk like 10 feet away from that, everything got really high levels. So yeah, I would wait until you're at least level 12 to come over here. Was he running that around in circles the whole time? Let me go ahead and set my pet on there. A little slow, unfortunately. I need to speed up on my DPS. I did not hold. Okay, so somebody else has a root on there. Usually the Necro root, which is either Dooming Darkness or Engulfing Darkness or whatever kind of darkness spell that you have, will override other people's. But you got to keep in mind that the players that I'm with right now are dramatically higher level than I am, and so yeah, it's being the lowest person in the group kind of sucks. Come on now. Let's go ahead and use my pet on this guy. Go ahead and put on my Clinging Darkness. No, did not stack with whatever they're casting. Oh, that one didn't stack either. Of course, he's a crocodile and not a caiman. And crocodiles are higher level creatures than the caimans. They're a lot higher hit points, a lot higher in their damage per second that they do. They really hit quite decent. I mean, the ones you really want to worry about, though, are the deep water crocodiles. Those are the ones that will wipe the floor with you. So you do have to look at the name and actually be able to remember that, okay, these ones do this, and these over here do that. These tell you that it's a different tier of creatures. In a lot of the other games coming out now, you can click on a creature and it tells you all these stats, but it kind of breaks the illusion of the old school, roleplay and D&D, because I clicked on the creature. How do I know anything about that creature? I haven't discovered any of that stuff. I haven't figured out that it's weakness to cold, and it's strong against fire, and it has 3 arrows up, meaning it's a harder creature than these other ones. These over here don't have anything on them. The only reason I know that deep water crocodiles are the hardest is because we've been fighting them, and I figured it out for myself, just like everybody else will. So I kind of like that. I kind of like having to figure this stuff out, rather than just basically being handed all the information on a platter. And this game is really good about giving you very little information. When you have your new spells, you can go buy them, but basically all they tell you is how much power they cost, how long they take to cast, and the name. They don't give you a description. They don't tell you that this spell gives you 15 extra strength and it does this and that. No, you literally have to get the spell and then go cast it on either yourself or a friend or an enemy, and then try to figure out what that spell is actually doing to them. And sometimes it's not easy to tell the difference on some of these spells. So it took a long time for players to figure out and actually agree. For the longest time, I remember there people having arguments which spells were better and which spells actually did this. And people were saying, no, it doesn't do that, and combined with this spell, it does this, and people were disagreeing with that. So yeah, it's definitely pretty cool now that all that information is out there and people agree on it. But before that, it was really just up to you. It was almost like, the Old West. Everybody had their own opinion. They were all willing to fight over it. And there would be some people out there so picky that unless you played your character the way they wanted you to in raids, you couldn't join them. And that was kind of crappy because, people didn't even agree back then on which spells you were supposed to be using. So, yeah, it's kind of cool now, but I know I kind of miss the old days where everything was unknown. But you can't really get that back. There's, unless you changed all the name, but then you'd be changing the game. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, you can't get that back, unfortunately. unless you go through the game completely blind. You know, if you're brand new to this game and you want that experience, you could go through this game without asking anybody any information and trying your best not to read any information that has anything to do with that, and trying to figure out the spells for yourself. You're more than welcome to try that. That might actually be kind of fun to do it that route for a character, because I've never played like a wizard, so it'd be interesting to go through and try to figure out what the wizard spells do as they level up. But yeah, it's definitely something more hard than most games actually tend to thrust upon you. Most games out there nowadays are just trying to make it as easy as possible, almost to the point where if you put the remote in a baby's hand, just him thrusting his fingers down on the buttons would get him to level 50, and he'd be able to go to raid zones and get really cool armor, and you wouldn't even understand what he's doing. He's just throwing the remote against the back of the crib. That's how easy they want to make the games, because it opens it up to everybody who can play. Basically, everybody who's alive can play the game. And that means more money for them in the long run. But I don't know. I kind of think that the genre or the field of hardcore games that are accessible to people who enjoy playing games that are not so ridiculously hardcore, that unless you have nothing to do with your entire day, you can't play it. I mean, there's one game out there I remember seeing that was so hardcore that I didn't even want to try playing it. What it was is, you played your character, you leveled up. It was really, really hard to level up. A lot of grinding, a lot of killing stuff. And if and when you died, which happened quite often, you had the chance. I think it was something like a 10% chance to lose your character completely. That was it. Your game's over. You got to start from scratch all over again. And thinking about how much time I invest in like Everquest, trying to get my guy completely maxed out, I can't even wrap my head and fathom what it would be like to lose that character simply because you died. I would go nowhere. I would be like the South Park episode of Cartman killing boars that are level 1 and getting like 3 experience for like a gazillion years, just so that I would have no chance of ever losing my character. But then that wouldn't be very fun to play. And so I don't know if I could ever play a game like that. I think that's too hardcore. But something like this where you're penalized, but it isn't permanent for the most part. Yeah, you could lose your corpse completely forever, but that would have to be a really, really drastic situation. One, you'd have to do it someplace that was really hard to get to, like underneath a dragon. And two, you would have to be the least likable person in the game to not be able to get even complete strangers to help you get your corpse back. Because I've seen plenty times where people were like, they were having trouble getting their corpse back, and all they have to mention is they only have a day left on their corpse. And quite literally the entire zone drops what they're doing and says, let's go do it. And that's it. You got like 60 people who are trying to get your corpse back. Because they themselves can't wrap their brain around letting somebody lose their corpse, because it's that big of a deal. That's basically like, unless you guys help me, I'm out. I'm out of the game. I'm going to quit. And that's exactly basically what it means. So, yeah, it does not happen very often. I really can't think of any situation where I remember hearing somebody losing their corpse other than the dragon. I think that's the only situation. Some guy trapped his corpse under a dragon. It was on during the time where people were switching over to EverQuest 2 and not playing EverQuest 1 as much. And because of that, he couldn't find anybody to kill the dragon. It was one of the old dragons that people weren't killing in the first place. And then, of course, not a lot of people were on. And he tried getting his corpse. He tried getting people to summon his corpse. And there was an issue with it. And it was everything he could possibly do, he tried, and it just didn't work out, and he lost his corpse. And I don't even know if that story's true. All I know is I've heard it, and it's been around for a long time. So, it's one of those things that, as long as you've got some friends, and if you're in a guild, that thing's never gonna happen to you. It's crazy, But I don't know. I like the hardcore genre. I just think there needs to be some defined limits on what defines a game to be hardcore and what people actually like about the hardcore. I can't imagine very many people like the fact that they can lose their character altogether. That just seems too drastic. Whereas with this, I see plenty of people who come back to this game with all the MMOs that are out there. They come back to this game and they come back to it for that challenge, but not such an insane one that they just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know, this is stupid. I'm not spending months upon months playing a character so I could have a chance at losing him. I'm not doing that, guys. I know you guys might want to see that game, and I may try it out in the future just to, you know, see what it's like for the first few levels, but there's no way I'm investing that many months upon months to get a guy up and just be like, oh yeah, I lost him today, that's pretty cool, right? I think I'll start again, because it was so much fun getting him up to those high levels, grinding for 16, 17 days at a time, and then losing it all. At least in this game, you feel a sense of accomplishment, you know. Every time you get another level, that's one less level that you will ever have to get again, you know. And then when you're finally maxed out level, you're done, right? You've got up to your max level. Now the world is open to you. Now you can go to those weird zones, and if you die 15 times, who cares? You're already max level. It doesn't mean anything to you as long as you can get your corpse back. You don't even have to worry about finding a cleric to res those bodies. Just leave them there and let them rot, or pick them up and let them disappear. You know, you're not worried about that kind of stuff. So there is that end stage that you eventually get to, which is cool because it allows you to explore and really check things out. But yeah, the games out there I think are just way too easy, and they just seem to be getting easier, you know. I mean, it's just like the Halo games. The first Halo one was if you played it on normal, it was way too easy. If you play it on legendary by yourself, it's actually pretty hard. If you play it with a friend, whether, you know, it's in the same room or something, it's not so bad because he can run out there and he dies. You can respawn him. It's not that bad, but it's still pretty difficult. And then the newer ones that were coming out, I'm like, I could do these in my sleep. They weren't that hard. The only good thing about those was the multiplayer. And it's pretty sad when your game titles, the best thing you could say about it is the multiplayer is awesome. Unless you're an MMO, you know, because that's the whole game. If you actually have like a campaign mode and people are like, who cares, right? That sucks. That means either one, you didn't put any effort into that campaign mode, or you completely and totally missed the mark on that, because they should both be fun. You should be able to have people who know that game for the campaign mode and people who know it for the multiplayer aspect of it, and love it equally for it. And I know that's probably what they were shooting for, and it's probably incredibly hard to actually do, because very few games ever master both of them in such a way that people enjoy both parts. But I think that's ultimately what you should be shooting for. And some games seem to just be like, you know, we were coming up with a campaign mode because we were pressured by our fans to do it, but we didn't really give a care about it, and we didn't want to do it. And so basically, here you go, it's crap on a plate, and you guys can mess around with it a little bit and watch, you know, your character's head will fall off, like in Grandma's Boy. And if you guys have not seen Grandma's Boy, stop what you're doing. Don't even bother finishing watching this, that's how awesome that movie is. Go watch that movie. That movie is hilarious. I don't know how many times I've quoted that movie. If you get in there, oh my God, "How do you see me?" is one of the funniest parts. So this guy in the movie, he's wearing like a black Matrix outfit. He's standing against the wall, and the wall's black, and he just doesn't understand how the guy can see him because he's that crazy. But yeah, it's a funny movie about a game programmer who finally gets his life together, I guess is the best way to say it. But I think his life was pretty good the way it was. I mean, he was doing the stuff he needed to do, and he was just doing it at his own pace, which I think is what everybody needs to do. People are so pressured nowadays, and the kids, I believe, have it the worst, man. I've never seen so much pressure put on a generation than this new one that's coming out, because so many things we feel are wrong with the world, and you know, you got pollution, you got you know, GMO, which is, you know, the genetically modified food, and you got, you know, politics and all this stuff, and everybody just seems like there's some negativity in some part of their aspect of their life, and they want to change it. And the kids, man, I think they're getting all that pressure of they're the ones who have to change it, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hold that burden. That seems pretty wicked. And the kids now are constantly having to learn more and more and more in school. And I know, looking at what other countries are doing, yeah, you're capable of doing it. You're capable of learning those skills in an environment that's friendly enough that it doesn't drive you completely bonkers like in Real Genius, where people would just go crazy from studying. But it has to be done right, and I don't think we're really doing it right. I think we're putting just pressure upon pressure on these kids. Other countries seem to have more of a relaxed feel, and I think ultimately that's the best way to teach people. I know it's kind of hard to learn in a relaxed environment because you're relaxed and you're just kind of sitting back and enjoying stuff. But if you can come up with a learning environment and a relaxed environment as well, I think that would be the best, because they got way too much stress. I see them nowadays, and they speak like 3 languages, and they can do all this stuff that I have no clue how they do it, and yet they can't find a job for anything because they're competition with other people who can speak 5 languages, and they got all this stuff because they were, going to school before they could walk, and they got their, it's just crazy how fast and how much they actually have to do. That was not part of my generation. I didn't have to do any of that. I got a job, and I got a pretty good one, and I think a lot of kids are actually starting to do trade schools as well as an option. So I don't know if that's going to become a thing or not. I think it would be. For me, if I was going to school, I think that's the route I would go. I would just pick one of those, because it's really hard to break into some of those fields, even with a good degree. But if you have the skill and you're capable of spending the time to show it off, I mean, there's tons of places out there you can show your work off. And these game companies will find you because they habit the same areas of the internet. They go through these same websites. They see this stuff that you do. There was a channel on TV called Tech TV a long time ago, and they used to have shows on there real late at night. They showed like animation that college students put together, or amateur people would make, and there would be these like weird CGI videos of like drummers playing a music and an alien pops out or something. It's just weird, artsy fartsy kind of stuff, and it was interesting to watch. And then I hear a lot of those people who did that kind of stuff got jobs because of it. So it's kind of the same thing here. I mean, you are passionate about football, you create your own YouTube channel, and before long, you may have a job as an actual football broadcaster or something like that. It's kind of cool that the people who are the most passionate about something are finally given the jobs that they should have gotten in the first place. I can't really stand people who are sitting there talking about movies, and you can literally tell that they hate horror movies. Why are you talking about horror movies? I don't like horror movies, so I don't go see them. I love comedies, so if I had a conversation about comedies, I'd be very knowledgeable, and I could name off a whole bunch of stuff and, actually have a decent conversation. But why do you get people to talk about comedies who quite literally don't even like movies themselves? And it's because they're a personality that people enjoy watching. Now people can find that same personality they enjoy watching in somebody who actually enjoys watching that stuff. And I think that's just a really, really cool aspect of the internet that is coming into its own. I mean, it's been there for a long time, but now, because it's been there for so long, a lot of these people who got there first are starting to make it pretty big, and it's coming to light that I think that's the route to go. Is the internet's going to replace TV and a whole lot of other stuff. I think it's already pretty much replaced my entertainment. I don't watch as many movies as I used to, and I think the games nowadays actually have a more rich and varied storyline than the movies coming out usually do. I mean, we're in the era of remakes and reboots and sequels. It's just nothing original is coming out. And I always make the joke with my friends when we talk about this, is that all the writers in Hollywood must have retired around the same time, because it seems like, because I used to work at the movie theater when I was younger, and my father ran and owned a drive-in movie theater as well when I was real young. So I've been around the movies, my whole life. And when I was working there as a teenager, we had huge blockbusters, not just like normal-sized movies that were supposed to do pretty well, but we had huge blockbusters coming out almost every weekend. And nowadays, I very rarely hear of any blockbuster. It's usually like 1 or 2 a year, if that. And the blockbusters that come out usually suck, in my opinion. They're not really that good. And man, we had so many good stuff. And Hollywood for a long time was getting these really good scripts, and they were going to both producers, both sides were reading them, and both sides were saying, I like that story, we're going to produce that, but we're going to do it a little bit different. Like, so with Armageddon and Deep Impact, both coming out about the same time, both on the same script, but two different takes on the same story. So that kind of thing used to happen quite a bit. And with those two movies, I think Armageddon is hands down better, but Deep Impact isn't that bad. I didn't think it was that good at the time, but compared to the, I was going to say crap that's out now, it's actually pretty good, which is a shame to say that, you know, the stuff nowadays is so bad it makes, you know, junk in the past look better, is basically what you're saying. But it's true, unfortunately, I think, at least in my opinion. Maybe you guys don't agree, maybe you do. Let me know below. I'd love to hear what your idea of the current generation of movies is. And I'm not talking about all movies, because occasionally they do have a really good one that comes out every so often. But if it's not a reboot or a sequel, it usually doesn't have any production value, and the story is pretty stupid. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Twilight. I mean, that's enough said right there, guys. That pretty much ruined the entire decade, just that coming out. Sparkling vampires. Why didn't somebody else think of that before? Oh, I know why. It's stupid. You know, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand people who, because I'm a writer, you know, I have published books and stuff like that, but I don't understand people who want to get into a field, you know, like vampires or zombies or werewolves, and don't know anything about it. They quite literally have never read a vampire book, or quite literally have never seen a zombie movie. They don't know the unwritten rules, or even the written rules of that genre, and yet they try to write something. And their way of rationalizing it is, they wanted to come to it fresh and create something different. Well, if you wanted to create something different, then create something completely and totally different, and don't go into the zombie universe, right? I mean, somebody created zombies, so create your own whatever version of something different that nobody has ever created. Why do you have to go into something that's been established to try to be different? Basically, you're saying, I want to use that genre because I know people like it, and I want to fool them into believing that it's going to be what they like. Why I do my own thing because I can't get anybody to read my stuff otherwise. Exactly what it is. You're fooling people into reading your stuff and hoping that they don't pay attention, that they don't notice. And in that situation, I mean, that movie was just... I don't get it. I do not get that movie. It made plenty of money, though. I got to give it to them on that one. They sold the crap out of that movie. And those people made a lot of money. So if that's all you're interested in, I'm sure you guys can produce some really, really horrible crap that people will go crazy for. But hopefully some of you guys out there watching who are programmers or thinking about writing or creating movies will take the extra step and don't always listen to the masses. Unfortunately, most of the time they're wrong, you know, in telling you what they think they want. They don't know what they want most of the time. I know I didn't. When I started playing video games, I thought I knew what I wanted, and then when I finally got it, I was like, I didn't really want this after all. Actually, I preferred it the old way. Why was I so set on thinking this is what I wanted when it really turned out not to be the case? And it's just you get this mindset. You get a picture in your head of the perfect game, and then when you finally get all of those things you've been begging for, you're like, it doesn't really work. I mean, you need those hidden features that programmers and storytellers put into it that most people never even notice. And it really brings the game together in a way that creates something very special. But you need those people, those talented people who know that field, and you need to give them the creative license to come up with stuff, because you'll be amazed by this stuff. And you see that nowadays, where all these independent companies are coming out, and they quite literally are doing their own thing. They're not answering to any corporation. They're not answering to fans or potential buyers. They're just producing their game. If you like it, pay for it. If you don't, well, then you don't pay for it, right? There's going to be more people out there who might like it. Maybe it will become a big game for that small niche. And I think that's another thing that has changed too. The population of the planet has gotten so big that when I was younger, I remember having to wait for a real-time strategy game like Command & Conquer or Dune to come out. It was like every 4 or 5 or 6 years another one would come out, and not even like the same genre. It's the same genre, but not the same company. Like Command & Conquer would sometimes wait a long period before their games Warcraft would wait long periods between their games. So you would have to wait quite a long time before you got your next fix of that genre. Nowadays, it seems like they're coming out literally every week, sometimes every day. I think that's because there's a bigger population to buy those games, not because more and more people are getting into them, but because the population has gotten so big. If you have 1 million people and 1% of those people like that game, it's not a whole lot of people to buy your game. But if you have 10 billion people and 1% of those people like your game, that's a whole lot of money. You know, so I think that's why you're starting to see a lot of these weird niches that you almost never got to see before actually becoming legitimate genres that are making quite a bit of money because of the population growth. And I think that's amazing that we as a species are quite literally changing the entertainment we get just by our pure numbers. It's amazing. I think it's not something most people actually really ever stop to think about. I know I usually didn't, not until recently that it occurred to me that, you know, when another country, because, you know, the United States, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I can't wait until other countries get involved in this, but unfortunately, we pretty much produce a lot of the content that the world, you know, soaks up as far as like Hollywood goes and the video games. Every country has their own. You know, Japan is pretty big, actually really big with their stuff. They have a lot of RPGs and, you know, Nintendo and all that other stuff. So, yeah, there's other ones out there, but I don't know. I don't really see China as being a big, you know, video game producer. I don't see Australia as doing that. I don't see, you know, Russia producing a lot of video games either. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I just don't get that perception out there that that's what's going on. And so I can't really wait until they do, because, and you're going to get to see some strange games from weird points of view that you never even considered. And I think that's mind-blowing to see from like a Russian's point of view. When we do ours, our video games always tend to be more heroic. You know, you need to go save everybody. You need to go do what's right. Is that what Russians enjoy? Is that what they like? Is that what Chinese people like? Is that what Japanese people like? You know, are they the exact same in their goals that they want to see in their video game? Or is it something different? You know, is it self-sacrifice for the greater good of, you know, the country? Or is it just simply doing your duty, or whatever the case is? I think it will be really cool to see the stuff that they produce. And I'm not even talking about like communist countries, you know, producing propaganda. I'm talking about legitimate people of that country freely producing video games that the people of that country are interested in. And I think that's ultimately where it's going to go, because you can't, as far as right now, maybe one day they can do it, but you can't really lock down the internet to stop people from using it. People always seem to find a way, even in countries that seem to have a handle on doing that, can't really keep up with you know, people's ingenuity, and just the fact that it's almost impossible to watch that many people at any one given time. There's just too many people on the planet, just too many people, too many things going on. And until you create a smart computer that can handle all those calculations, which there might already be at this point in time, but just not being freely told, you know, talked about, I don't think there's any way you can track all that. So, but it is kind of cool, because this is like the beginning. This, you know, when the internet first came out, it was just a group of college campuses grouped together that could share information. That's kind of what MMOs are. They're just a group of people who have latched their computers together in the online world, and they share information through that. They talk. I remember being on the game when situations happen in real life and finding out about it from people who were actually in that state when it was going down. Like if there was a shooting, people in that state would be talking about, you know, oh, their friend just got home and, you know, somebody was just shot down there, and then hearing about it like half an hour later on the news, and them getting, you know, 90% of the story wrong, and then the next day confirming exactly what my friend told me, or what some random stranger told me on the server, you know, 5 minutes actually after it actually happened. And that is amazing. You know, that's being part of not just a video game, but being part of the world. You know, you were part of that situation, you were part of that person's day, and, you know, you got to learn a little bit more than most people ever did, because some people only ever heard that first story on the news, and they didn't come back the next day to hear it. Maybe they they got too busy, so they never found out that, oh no, it was actually this way. They still think it's the other way. I didn't have that problem because I heard right from the source. So it's cool. I mean, I like the fact that you are interacting with other players. I think that's the biggest sell point for me, is that you can do something like that. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do, guys, because I don't want to make these videos too long, is go ahead and end the episode here. We got about a bubble of experience, a little bit more than that actually, about 1/5 into the next one. So you can see the experience is pretty slow. I mean, if I was over in Unrest right now, I'd probably have gained like 3 levels, but that's not what you come to these zones for. So hopefully you guys will try them out. Let me know what you think. Again, go into it with eyes open. You know what you're going to get when you come in here, and don't be expecting to get a whole bunch of levels. But it is cool because if you come in here when nobody's here, the whole zone would be for you. And if you ever get tired of being in a group, or if you can't find a group, you can solo by yourself. So that's always an option. That's not always an option in other zones. You can't really solo that well in Unrest. You can't really solo that well in Mistmore. I mean, you can, but just not nearly as well as you can out here. So yeah, it's definitely a tactic and definitely a reason to come over here. But again, guys, you're more than welcome to leave comments down below. I always love to hear back from you guys, especially on what you enjoy or stories that you want to share with the group. And again, guys, I'll catch you on the next episode.